need to have a common ambition, to be honest, which we see developing. This conference, I think, is a good proof of that. Second, we need European budgets to underpin the missions that then support reaching this goal and this ambition, which also there I have less concerns with Horizon 2020 budgets and many others developing EDIDP. I think we have there's some real opportunities. I do think, and I'm extremely clear on that, I think we need to extend the European General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, to cover all the data fields. It's not just the privacy-related ones. In my view, a first step is that we need to secure all our European data by an according law that, let's say, could be an extension of GDPR. Fourth, and I do think, again, we need to work on that. We need a commercial initiative like the one launched by Germany, like Gaia X, to define what I would call a commercial, harmonized European cloud infrastructure and the governance that could go hand in hand with it. And then, of course, in order to fill such an architecture with European, let's say, sovereign solutions, we will need to develop such solutions. Again, hardware, software, secure connectivity, all those aspects need to be covered. Last but not least, we at Airbus, we are absolutely convinced that we will see an enormous opportunity for technology development and capability developments in the context of the future combat air system development, which could significantly support this European ambition by reusing many of the developments that will be financed in this program. When I say that, especially the combat cloud, which is part of the FCAS system. It is responsible for the secure and meshed connectivity of the whole system. It's responsible for the trusted information superiority. So again, no fake news, but trusted information. And of course, it's responsible for action implementation support. And this could well become the highly secure prototype of what I see as a European sovereign cloud. The thing that we now need to do is we have to combine the momentum of all the initiatives. And if I look at some of the programs that we're working on, like Concord, together with Code and other participants, we need to combine all know-how and initiatives. And we have to use the momentum of those initiatives, the high investment volumes that are planned on all sides, to counterbalance what I would say the overarching weight today of Amazon, Google, and Alibaba. Their dominance in the digital world is, of course, the challenge that we need to master or get up against. The unique chance that I see in combining the two programs is really we could establish maybe a European harmonized governmental and industrial data protection regime. We could maybe get to harmonized certification processes, which I think are key for, let's say, success. We are certainly laying the basis then for cooperation across Europe in the PPP, and not only in the civil field, but in the civil and defense field, so that we combine all the budgets and the know-how into one target, which is European sovereignty. Of course, we would develop, and this is fundamental, European technologies, like, for example, software-defined networks or software-defined memories. But today, there is only American alternatives available. And last but not least, of course, we have to develop synergies and scale effects by combining civil and defense market opportunities. I think this is the enormous opportunity that is at hand, and I think this is what we should try to tackle together. So where do we exactly see the importance of FCAS in this endeavor? Maybe a few words of background for those that are not that aware. Of course, I know Secretary of State is in the middle of this, Zimmer, but of course, there's many that may not be that much aware. Future Combat Air System was initiated in 2017 by Germany and France, and it was followed and supported now also by Spain since 2019. Its mission is to shape, lead, and deliver independent European air power. Further Europeanization of the project is an explicit aim, so it will not stay with the 3 countries that we're mentioning. And already today, as a tri-national grouping, FCAS has the potential to be Europe's largest and most important security political program of the 21st century. An enormous, let's say, budget is being anticipated, and FCAS will become the backbone of European air forces starting from 2040 onwards. It's not just a new generation of combat aircraft. It is much more than that. It will be a complex meshed network, a systems of systems approach where, again, central fighters will be flying with drones. It will be combined, of course, with the available Eurofighters or the Dassault planes. It will really create a network of all capabilities in order to make sure that, let's say, our missions can be fulfilled. At the heart of this system is, of course, the combat cloud, which is securing the connectivity, the trusted information. And here it is really the goal to go for a multi-domain approach. It is combining air capabilities with land, with sea, with space, and of course the cyber domain. That is the clear goal. That is the background. A little bit more on the multi-domain combat cloud. The next, let's say, step, of course, with FCAS, we are really focused on the air combat cloud as a first, let's say, step. But the multi-domain combat cloud is really about collaboration across all domains, across all, connecting all the nodes, and most of all, integration of heterogeneous platforms, including, of course, legacy and existing platforms as an evolutionary path. Again, this is very, very similar to what we will have to do in the context of European sovereignty. It's about connecting not just the new equipment and the new, let's say, assets, but also bringing, of course, the existing assets into this link. It is across all the domains, as I mentioned, air, land, sea, space, and cyber. It's about real-time, enabling real-time intelligence and exchanges. A new level of synchronization will be needed. Will be also using very much new connection technologies like optical communication. And of course, it is all about enabling and increasing the effectiveness of multi-domain operations. Faster mission cycle loops, giving every single decision maker out there the trusted and right information at the right time in order for him to support the mission. Finally, the digitalization of the battlefield is not about one cloud. Of course, in each aircraft, there will be a secure cloud to support the missions. It's a network of clouds that needs to be orchestrated and in order to get the operational benefits. This multi-domain combat cloud, in Airbus's view, operating at the highest security level, can become really representative of what Europe needs at large for its European digital sovereignty. So what do we have to do? Assuming that FCAS is being financed and the multi-domain combat cloud will find its way, we have to combine the military and the civil worlds to enable, of course, this leverage. As such, I think it can be a game changer if we get that combination done well. This combination will support interlaced architectures, which in the military world represent the benchmark in international defense. So Europe can really play a key role here and to be truly independent. The MDCC has a long-term goal, of course, to secure comprehensive networking of the complete European defense landscape, from a central cloud on the ground to the respective cooperative systems in the distinct military domains. And it's most of all a holistic and harmonized approach, which is a condition of its success. An approach which secures European sovereignty and resilience from terrestrial infrastructure right up to the low and geostationary Earth orbits. For this work, it will be necessary and vital to control all aspects, as mentioned before, hardware, software, and cyber, just as a few examples, from the chip to the product. The remaining challenge will be, of course, to bridge our different national interests, as I mentioned at the start. towards a European harmonized solution while protecting, of course, our national sovereignties like assets and data. By combining it now, and this is really the goal, with initiatives like, for example, what I mentioned, Gaia X in the civilian sector, where the commercial cloud is really completely dominated today by American and Chinese players, we see a real chance to get our feet on the ground for what I would call a European digital sovereignty approach. So assuming the financing happens on FCAS, and I can again look to Secretary of State Zimmer to let's say only hope that will work, then I really think this could be a game changer for Europe. In conclusion, I think it is fair to say that digitalization blurs the lines between military and civil applications. Now we should make best use of that. New technologies open up, let's say, potential for spillover effects, reuse effects, and scale effects between the different markets. Beyond user-friendliness, cost reduction, standardization, interoperability, of course, security is the key factor. We need to ensure in our military, but also in our civilian applications. And again, combining those planned initiatives cleverly can make the difference for us. Finally, last but not least, to be clear, a combat cloud ground infrastructure will be an enormous competitive asset that can be reused in peace times for commercial applications. And as such, it could be an enormous strong nucleus as the starting of a very, very capable infrastructure. So we have a real opportunity. In summary, now we just have to make it work. Cooperation between all the parties, but of course also making sure that the FCAS program gets the proper financing in order that it can start its road towards supporting European digital independence. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dudok, for your keynote. Now, this leads us into our final panel for today on ensuring sovereignty on future key technologies. Now, this panel is going to be moderated by our very own Professor Gabi Dreo, Director of the Code Research Institute. Gabi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johannes, especially. Thank you, Johannes. I was especially honored to say about your warm and welcome words. So it is a pleasure for me to welcome you to the final panel for today, ensuring sovereignty on future key technologies. First, I have to apologize, Bruno from INRIA. He cannot join us due to urgent medical issues. So we will have the possibility before, and so have more time also to discuss. Today, the whole day, we are discussing about digital sovereignty. But the question is really, what are the key technologies? European citizens and businesses share a growing concern that they are losing their digital sovereignty. And what means this? This means the ability to act independently in a digital world. The European Council called for action to ensure the strategic autonomy in the EU and stressed that investing in digital capacities, infrastructure, and technologies will be a key element. But what are the key technologies? Let's see in what world we are. We are in the world where we have a dominance of hyperscalers, where big tech companies are almost running the digital world. The world's largest online retailer, Amazon, got now a fine, which he probably say this is peanuts for me, from the EU. So we don't have IT champions, and we are dependent on IT that origins from US and China, but we need trustworthy IT, because trust is really the basis or the fundament of our digital freedom and digital independence. But if you see also on the other side, for example, Tesla running terabytes of data of its vehicles to train algorithms for autonomous driving. So what do we need to do? What are the technologies, what are the other aspects we have to do to become more key technologies? So I'm very pleased to have such a good panel discussing various aspects of these technologies. And I would like to start with State Secretary Zimmer and say hello to the panel and ask him the first question. We all depend on trustworthy IT, the defense sector even more. And the Ministry and the Digital Council of the Ministry have worked together on the topic, what are these key technologies, what are important from the perspective of the Ministry. So what are the key findings?
I try to do it this way. Hopefully now everybody can listen to me. Thank you, Gabi, for giving the sign. Let me start, first of all, to explain to everybody what is all about with that kind of digital council, because I think not everybody is aware of that. We introduced that at the beginning of 2019, and it was just an idea to have expertise coming from outside from Ministry of Defense, in order to give our minister the best way and the best ideas, what we should get focused on thinking about, just as an example, about digital sovereignty. And so we have over there representatives of academia, industry, civil society, and definitely the armed forces as well, because sometimes it helps to have the experts, the operators in the boat as well. The findings from our perspective, what we do need is a certain amount of control and the freedom how to solve our problems on our own. That does not mean on Germany own, just to make that quite clear. What I'm talking about is we are forced on, you stressed that, trustworthy IT. Means, in other words, we have to develop and maintain key technologies in that aspect. And we have definitely to maintain core command capabilities, increasing innovative capabilities. Because what we are used to is having a long planning cycle, and at the end of the day, after 10 years, all is well settled, but we are too late. And definitely we have to develop and maintain digital competence. Wonderful words. To sum it up, at the end of the day, we are dependent, as you mentioned it, Gabi. And we have to try to overcome that, at least to an amount that we can trust our IT, means our IT in Germany, definitely, means our IT in the German armed forces, definitely, but in Europe as well. Focusing on some aspects from the keynote speaker, I think he made quite clear with one of the biggest programs we're currently facing, what it's all about, and especially what it is linked to talking about cyber, talking about IT, talking about this kind of digital sovereignty we do need. We shouldn't forget, on the other hand, that's not only a question of one weapon system. That is a question for the whole government. That's a question, as you highlighted, what Europe is going for, what Europe has to go for. Otherwise, we are simply outdated. We can look what is all around us, and we can pick up some technical details. Nice to have had them, but at the end of the day, we do not own them. So we do not have the freedom of movement, the freedom, and the necessary control. So thank you very much. That is a hopefully short answer to a big question.
Thanks a lot. There will be certainly more questions about this. I would also encourage our virtual environment. So people from in the streams, please state questions so that we can give them to the panelists. I can read them if there are some coming in. And I know we have over 600 registered participants, so there are some people listening to our discussions. Right. The EC points, so the Commission, that European digital sovereignty rests on three pillars: computing power, control over our data, and secure connectivity. Jiří, you are the Chief Executive of the European Defence Agency. What technologies you see, what you are funding, what you are supporting, or you envision that they are most important for the perspective of European Defence Agency?
Thank you, Gabi, and good afternoon. And again, great appreciation for inviting us and me to deliver a few comments from the European Defence Agency agency's point of view. Now, indeed, digitalization, a key challenge, offers both opportunities and risks. And this is something which we've been involved over years and reflected. This agenda is reflected in different prioritization tools that we are developing. And the key one, here we are, I'm getting to the question that we start with the prioritization through the capability development plan, where member states actually are defining their priorities, and we are trying somehow to synthesize them. And there are 11 now main priorities, and those digital technologies indeed are transversal across all of them by and large. Now, to be more concrete in terms of what we do or which projects or technologies we recognize as a key, I would name few of the main, and all of them are more or less already long-term priorities in what we do. For example, unconstrained access to the radio spectrum as an indispensable prerequisite for to operate many technologies, and here we have to exploit synergies with civilian technologies like 5G, space as one of the global commons and an emerging operational domain at the same time, and this provides unique option or opportunity to deploy capabilities to get reliable intelligence, improved accuracy weapon systems, better situational awareness, support of timely decisions, and making reliable availability of communication links. And indeed, all that in the context of the transfer of big data. Cybersecurity, defense technologies, this was already discussed. I believe what I should emphasize is that the cyber situational awareness comprising essential research challenges to assist military decision makers in cyberspace, and indeed all this goes to the reliability of command and control systems for cyber operations. Software-defined radio and software-defined network, something that we've been already for more than a decade. Quantum computing, especially for quantum encryption technologies, another area. And indeed, if we look at the EDA's technology building blocks identified in the overarching strategic research agenda, which is one of our main prioritization tools, here we have 3 key areas for future capabilities recognized. And it is artificial intelligence, advanced materials, and autonomous systems. And last point that I would like to say now is that indeed we are dealing with and trying to foster civil-military synergies, acting, European Defence Agency as a sort of interface between the defence community and the European Commission and its civilian-focused programs. And this is essential, as many of the ongoing and future policies and projects designed to foster technological sovereignty should indeed also support defense requirements. We are in the area of dual use, and therefore we should keep the possibility of exceeding various instruments for funding that are not primarily defense oriented for those dual civil-military synergies. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jiří. I would like to include the discussion Stefan. Stefan is advisor of Lakestar, one of Europe's leading venture capital firms investing in technology companies. Stefan, in what do you invest? maybe turn on your mic.
Sorry. Yeah. Once again, thank you very much for having me here. Gabi, I'm not investing because I'm working with the companies together as an advisor, but Lakestar is investing since Klaus Hommels, the founder, is investing into European and very few global tech companies in the consumer internet field, as well as in specific business-to-business application. Here in security, he invested into Auterion. Auterion is a drone operating system operating out of Zurich and Munich. But more or less, we are focusing on the consumer internet and certain specialties left and right.
Okay, thanks a lot. The question was also, of course, that Lakestar is investing, but since this is a VC, a big venture capitalist, the question is, what are the topics, what are the technologies European VCs are investing in? Because we see that we have startups get this money for the first round funding, and after then they are bought by US companies. Skype was an extremely good example of this.
Yeah, you have to see.
What we are doing wrong?
Let me answer your first question first. Where are investors investing? So Lakestar is a true European operation. We mainly invest into European startups. If you look at our asset allocation, probably more than 85 to 90% go into European companies, and that includes Britain and Switzerland as well. So in which kind of sectors are venture capitalists investing? That is a moving target. So 10 years ago, venture capitalists invested into consumer internet businesses. More or less everything you see today from Delivery Hero, which recently IPO'd on the German Stock Exchange. Lakestar had huge investment. Klaus Hommels had huge successful investment into Zing, the business network. So, and you usually keep these investments running for 4 to 7 years. So you're pretty long with the company. It's not a hedge fund thing where you invest shortly. You help the founders, and you grow them. That focus has a bit changed away from consumer internet, because consumer internet is so dominated now by large players. For example, you hardly find any more investments into e-commerce companies, because that field is dominated by Amazons. And if you look at the money being allocated to e-commerce companies 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and today, it's highly negative correlated with the growth of Amazon. You see similar developments 10 years ago for social networks. You had a couple of social networks where venture capitalists invested into verticals and special social networks. With the rise of Facebook and Instagram, the investments are shifting. The trends now is more B2B, investing more into niche B2B, going for new business models in transportation. That is probably a new field. Looking for market research. I would say, Gabi, the general trend is less money into consumer internet, because that is a consolidation play. On a European perspective, more money into business-to-business companies, and more money into deep tech, artificial intelligence, data. And not so much money going into the cybersecurity space. Why is that? Because you find much more talent who understand consumer internet or solutions for B2B, rather than people like you and I know who are working for Giesecke or other companies who really have deep knowledge in the defense or cybersecurity. Airbus, I'm sure, same system here. You need very specialized people, and you don't find that on the talent pool who start their own companies so massively compared to B2B or B2C.
Okay. Okay, I think we have a lot to discuss, but I have the first question, which I would like to pass to State Secretary Zimmer from the audience. How do we ensure the interoperability of major digitalization programs like FCAS with the NATO, as other nations have their own programs, like Tempest in the UK?
Sorry, that's technology. Once again, I do like that, somewhat like a 100 billion euro question, because at the end of the day, I could talk as a technician, and so let me start as a technician first. It's quite simple. The only thing you have to define is the language every system is commonly using in order to exchange data, which are nothing else than zeros and ones. Having said that, it sounds extremely simple, I do know that. And from my perspective, from a technological point of view, it is not that difficult. The bigger problem is to convince everybody in the sovereign nations to overcome this kind of special approach to keep all the military things, the security things, and now we are talking about IT as well, in their own hands without sharing at least source codes, at least a door that is open to bring the data into the different systems provided by different nations. And that we have to overcome. I think that was quite clear in the first words from Evert, because he mentioned it's not that simple to get an approach that satisfies all nations involved. But that we have to do. And that is a bigger problem than technology, because that is focusing on the will of the people acting over there, including the heads of states, including the parliaments. So that is not a short run. That's definitely more than 40 kilometers to run. So we have to pace up, but we have to bear in mind, even if there is a step back, we have to follow that line. So from that perspective, coming to the highest level, if European Union brings that forward on a very high strategic level, the governments are willing to come together, and industry is willing to open the books, not jeopardizing every secret, that's not the need for, but to a certain amount to open the books. Then we will be able to overcome that problem, from my perspective, quite easily. But there must be a will.
Okay, so a strong, would you say a public-private partnership would be the answer for developing our IT technology?
I always have to take two times the switch on the microphone. So I, to a certain extent, I do like that kind of format. But coming back to a question, no, I think that's not the answer to that. What we have to do is, first of all, we have to get a certain amount of trust between industries. That industry is, not every industry, not every national industry is used to do so, to deal with that. So let's start with projects. If there's a project that's running well, then it's fine. Then trust can come up, raise, and then we can base on that on an industrial level. And as far as the governments are concerned, as far as the parliaments are concerned, there must be just the willingness to support that. If that is the fact, then we find a solution, rather sooner than later, step by step.
Okay, very good point. This means trust is the basis of our freedom and digital sovereignty. And we have another question, which I think would like to pass to Jiří. How is digital European sovereignty defined in a federation of sovereign states? How is it possible European digital sovereignty in and with NATO, conceivable in contrast to the US and above all Turkey and its proximity to Russia? Oh, so maybe start with the first part of the question. How is digital European sovereignty defined in a federation of sovereign states?
I think this is rather actually a political question, and we should start with perhaps look back to the experience of European integration. in terms of that. Actually, it started, as we know, early 1950s, and there was a growing sharing and of transfer of parts of sovereignty until our days, and so we should just have a look at this example. And we are operating with actually rather different and very recent definitions of sovereignty. First, it would be good to define it, what it means, what it is, what it should mean, what are the criteria, what is the let's say end state of EU digital sovereignty. And then indeed it's about negotiation, and there will never be, I think, like in the area of defense and security, this is really very sensitive area, so it's a long way to go. But I would start, first of all, I would look back to the example of sovereignty sharing on transferring. Second, I would define the end state, which is a vision into the future, and then indeed, step by step, incrementally, and we should always have in mind the opportunity cost. Yeah? If we do not share more sovereignty, if we do not do things more together, what it would actually create in terms of disadvantage vis-a-vis our let's say contenders or competitors, and at the same time, indeed, what it means for our interoperability with our allies, and especially the major one. Yeah, and this is extremely important. And this goes also. Yes. Okay, I will stop here.
Okay, thanks a lot. There was a few years ago, I think Enisa published such a nice picture about a burger. It was US and under China, also beyond, and Europe was something like a meat between. And I think this was, I think we have to go up or out of this. So the question is really about key technologies. Key technologies, we can say, for example, AI, 5G, quantum, secure network, secure data. I think this is necessary really to amplify this we have to develop. But if you see, for example, 5G, we have in Europe two industries like Nokia, like Ericsson, who provides 5G capabilities. Shouldn't we more invest in growing these technologies in Europe? Maybe Evert, you're representative from the industry part.
Yeah, the clear answer, if we want to play Europe, then we all have to play Europe, independent of whether Nokia is in Finland or wherever they are, or Ericsson in Sweden. We have to really play exactly as you say. If we want to really strengthen our capabilities, and then secure connectivity, trustworthy connectivities in the 5G domain is a starting point. We're going to connect everything in the future. We know that. And if everything is connected, you really would like to be sure that the technology that is in there is the one that you can fully trust. It's a starting point of trust. So I think we have to bring the strengths of, and 5G is just one. Of course, there's other topics like, I don't know, software-defined networks, software-defined memories, but we will have to find the right players to do so when it comes to certain products. I mentioned that before, that today a good product of a very innovative company, Secunet in Germany, cannot be used in France because it's not certified. We really have to tear down some of the big mountains between our nations, and we have to really also say, okay, yes, we buy European on critical technologies because that's where we can be, I would say, in charge of our own destiny.
Okay, thanks. Thanks also, Evert, that you step in. Angelika Niebler from the European Parliament will join us in a few minutes, so thanks for stepping in. Jiří, we have also another question for you here. Is there any initiative to empower the EDA in cyber capability building beyond its coordination role?
Yeah, actually, answer is simple. No, we are coordinator, we are platform, we are moderator, we are hub, we are facilitator. But for the member states, yeah. So in the end, this is in the hands of member states. That would be my answer.
Very quick, thanks. Good. Maybe another question to State Secretary Zimmer. We know that the ministry invests and needs trustworthy IT. And that the ministry has also a lot of innovation elements there. Is there any way more to make more cooperation or to strengthen or to support the IT industry in Europe to grow? To grow. I think it's necessary to unmute.
Is it now working?
Yeah, now it's working. Thanks.
Great. So at the end of that conference, I'm slightly convinced that I can organize with that here. But coming back to your question, it's always nice to talk about more. From my perspective, we have to do that better coordinated. In other words, you know that we have this Cyber Innovation Hub that is focusing more or less what's currently on the different cyber issues with the startups available. Then we have the agency we have introduced for innovation in cybersecurity. We have your institute at the University in Munich. We have parts in the University of Hamburg. And we shouldn't forget what we have introduced to both the universities. The Center of Digitalization and Technology Research of the Bundeswehr of the Federal Republic of Germany Armed Forces some months ago, talking about August, focusing on everything that is running about digital sovereignty in the farthest sense of words. Means, in other words, all the keywords have been mentioned by now. Artificial intelligence, advanced materials, autonomous systems. A wonderful thing that we can push forward. The major question is, do we have to support IT industry in allowing them to pace up with other industries because they've been outpaced by now? 5G, just to mention that, 5G is nice with Ericsson, but most of technology of 5G is located either in China or in South Korea. Only the two nations are able to do 5G on their own, just to mention that. It's not really sufficient to have just some parts that fit into the environment of 5G. So having said that, I think we should look forward, we should look at into a future that is brand new, that's not 5G, whatever you would like to name it, which is the future. 5G is not the future. 5G will be in 2, 4, 5 years reality, and then there will be no stop. So what we have to start with, and that is focusing on this kind of lights going far into the farthest direction. We have to identify what will be the future after 5G. What will be the future and the necessity on security aspects. One computer, just one word on that. That we have to get focus on. And then we will be once again member in the race. Not just trying to allow everybody to pace up with what has been identified and produced by now.
Okay, very nice idea. So the point is, if I say, for example, quantum technologies, which means quantum computing, quantum communication, quantum sensing, and so on. Europe is investing or is top research leaders there for many years. But what we see that the quantum computers are built either in the US, we know it by, for example, IBM, Google, Microsoft, and we buy these computers back to make it even better for the outside. wouldn't it be a revolutionary idea to build a quantum computer, for example, in Europe and strengthen, for example, IT, hardware development, software development, also in other areas like AI and something like this? What do you think?
Whom you ask that?
Sorry, you. I'll ask you.
From just coming back to what I mentioned before, yes, indeed, that would be an idea. That would definitely be an idea. The point is, once again, to get that coordinated between the nations at European level, rather than to doing it on their own in Britain, in France, in Sweden, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany. Everybody's pushing the same money into the same project and achieving at the end of the day with 10 times more money is the same what one nation can achieve if they just pushing the money into one project. So from that perspective, yes. And to be honest, I'm looking especially at Munich, at the Codec, to learn your experience on whatever kind of quantum computing is all about. Currently, it's a wonderful idea, not more than that. If you can achieve that, bringing that to reality, bring that baby to life, then it's really great. And definitely it could be one of the ways to the future.
Thanks a lot. We will do our best. Stefan, what is your opinion about this?
My opinion, what should we do? That is the $1 million question. Look, we have very limited resources. It's probably fair if we consider the options we have today. It's probably very fair. We can't do everything. It's impossible. We have so many challenges with the European development to build that further on, with defense questions, with environmental questions, with technology. I think we have to focus. And I would say if we look why America got so successful in the consumer internet and in digital, why they have built this huge, successful digital backbone now in America, who creates hundreds of billions of value and for the society in America, then they did a couple of things right. First of all, they had great universities, and they made sure that we got the best students in the world coming to them and study. And it's probably very fair that if we talk about artificial intelligence, I looked into artificial intelligence from a venture perspective, and it's very fair to say that this is not the normal network gaming, what we see with Google and others. It has a lot to do of small teams of mathematicians who work on algorithms, on machine learning, and learn something. We rather talk about 50 people and not 5,000 people who work on search. So you can do a lot by providing programs and support to companies, startup companies, who work on artificial intelligence close to universities, and that's probably a good angle to go to. The next thing, I truly believe is important for us as a society in Europe and in Germany, is really to define where we want to become independently. And I give you just one example. You all know the cybersecurity field much better than I do. But let me give you one example. For example, the browsers are now getting into position dominated by Google, and actually dominated by Google, that they start to select what we see. They don't play out what the websites show. The Windows is being changed, it's being closed. I ask myself, when is Europe putting up an initiative to create a European browser that has our value system and it's not changing? So Evert had this morning GDPR in one discussion. Europe introduced GDPR and the whole world followed GDPR, even North America. And I think it would be good to define where we want to become independent. And this cannot be in every field. I'm not an expert on quantum computers. I'm not sure whether it's quantum computers. if we talk about the telecommunication networks, G5, I'm always surprised. I'm sure there's tons of information, tons of analytics, but someone for me who traveled China to believe that any company in China can do something without the Chinese government. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. Jack Ma, as the CEO and chairman from Alibaba, was under heavy pressure, and his spin-off of Ant Financial was stopped by the Chinese authorities within a fortnight after he criticized lending technology to smaller households in China. The Chinese government decided he will not do the greatest IPO on the planet. I'm surprised why we have this discussion if you travel intensively to China and talk to people there. But that is my personal opinion, and I'm not an expert on G5. So what do we have to do? Invest into I think the three magic pillars are education, to define where we want to have sovereignty, close the markets, sadly to say, define the market as we did with the European Commission, that Microsoft had to remove the browser from its operating system. Now we have 3 browsers. We have to do similar things in Europe. And then let's try, with all the support of all nations, to build it. I truly believe, and that might be very interesting for you, that tax cuts are not something we need. If we compare the French ecosystem, where they provide huge tax benefits to investors into startup companies, compared to England, Germany, Spain, my feeling is that's not a big differentiator. We rather need something different. We rather need a clear attitude that we can do it and that we do it now, than we do big tax cuts for huge programs. I'm not sure whether that would really change something.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think one aspect that we didn't touch yet is, of course, the power of information, fake news and disinformation. So actually, we are dominated also here in Europe by social media and social networks that do not result in from Europe. So we are clearly dominated here. And the question is really, what do we have to do? So would be an answer, well, the key technologies, of course, what is, for example, in the front area, like quantum computing, like artificial intelligence, and so, well, artificial is not so far, but shouldn't we build something like European data place where we have European data put for analytics, for development of AI? Because personally, I would trust more the European institutions to give my data to them, and that they develop the AI technology, which are the algorithms with niche data to be trained, as to give my data to the US, and then buy AIs from the algorithms either from US or China. So the question would be also to do something like this. Stefan, what would you say?
Look, I think, let me say one word before. I think, Gabi, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a lot of things coming out of China. And we didn't speak intensively about, we both did, but we didn't speak intensively about what the Chinese government is investing at the moment in artificial intelligence. It is a huge initiative that will drive a lot of growth and a lot of programs in the next 3 to 5 years that will change the whole landscape. Coming to your question about social media, I have worked for a media company like Huber Boden. And there's a talk of Bharat Anand and me on the DLD, which you can find on YouTube. And Bharat Anand wrote a great book about the content trap. And what can I say, Gabi? It doesn't go away. Bharat Anand, he talked about everyone is now a publisher. And we can't turn that away. I think from a consumer perspective, it will be absolutely challenging if you take millions and millions of Germans and hundreds of millions of Europeans YouTube away, or Facebook or Instagram. But we have to give them rights, we have to give them rules if they publish something which is not correct, which is not appropriate. And we probably need a system that they're allowed to play in. But I just want to emphasize that it is just the beginning, because that's what we will see coming out of artificial intelligence and virtual reality out of China. I mean, what we have seen in the American election 2016 with fake news, it is just a tiny zip to that what you can do with artificial intelligence and visual realization of new technology. Angelika Niebler could probably now stand up. A hacker could change it. You could see the person moving around the whole screen. That is today all possible from a technology point. And there's much more to come. I don't believe it's going away. The question I have, look, when Facebook acquired WhatsApp, the European Commission allowed that transaction and then the acquisition with a clear signal not to mix the consumer data between WhatsApp and Facebook. And they did it. And why is that possible? My question is, why is that possible? So it comes at the end to answer your question, Gabi. I think we need rules, because that thing doesn't go away. And it's even getting more accelerating through technology. We need European regulation. Believe me, we know each other for more than 6 years. I'm a very liberal person. I'm not a socialist. I'm not someone who really calls for the strong state. I'm absolutely not. But I come to a point where I say, if we really want to build an independent European society, we have to set up some regulations like the Chinese did. I mean, today, China has a huge technology industry. They blocked everyone out. It's huge. It's enormous what they have built. The valuations of the companies are there. Can we forbid Google? Can we forbid Facebook? No, we can't, but we can give them certain limitations. For example, mixing data between each individual subsidiaries they have. For example, not allowing them to invest into new features once they have a certain size and to acquire startup companies, or to make sure that they establish their own operations here in Europe running independently from America. These are 3 examples I have quoted recently in a DPR interview, but we have to work on it. I truly don't believe anymore that the market will fix it. And I say that as a very liberal, conservative person, not as a center state socialist.
Okay, Stefan, thanks a lot. I can pass this question to Angelika. Welcome to our round again. Angelika, you are a member of the European Parliament. You heard the call for regulation. So what is the answer?
Well, I fully agree with Stefan Winners as regards this aspect. I think we need some sort of regulation, and that is actually what we are dealing now in the European Parliament. We had a lot of discussions and roundtable talks where we tried to elaborate on that question, and the Commission will come up in due course at the end of this year, or at the latest at the beginning of next year, with the Digital Market Act, where exactly that point is going to be addressed. So I think this is one issue. But I'm more enthusiastic about, trying to create a European data space or a European public data sphere. Gabi, that was actually your question, which you addressed to Stefan. Well, I think we should try it, honestly. No one wants to prevent that TikTok or YouTube or whatever is used, but I think we should make an effort and try that we also arrange for a sort of European public sphere, where we have a clear guidance, where data protection is an issue, where cybersecurity is an issue, and where we have rules on false statements, on fake news, etc. So, well, I talked to a lot of stakeholders who think we should try it. We should try to do that. This is only possible, I think, if we have a joint commitment coming from industry, from politicians, from Commission should have a say and a lead in that as well, and academia. But I think we should not simply just leave it. And I would like to add one other issue, I do not know as to whether that was already addressed. I have to apologize. I was in another meeting and I thought we started at 3:30. I want to address the issue on industrial data as well. And I think in Europe, we have a really, really strong industrial base. And in order, and all our production sites and everything, we have to make sure that, all the data collected, processed, analyzed, used as regards industrial data, I think we have to ensure that knowledge and that know-how is not also automatically being forwarded to other regions in the world, but that this really gold in our hands, that we keep it in Europe. And for that, we also need a regulation approach, I think, on the one hand side, but also let's try to find out how we can keep these data in Europe. And I'm strong on it. Well, I think we should go for a provision setting out that data collected in Europe should also be stored in Europe, at least as a sort of backup. But I'm happy to discuss that, and I'm now giving back to you for further consideration. Thank you.
Angelika, thanks a lot. I would stress it even stronger. If we don't do this, then we are already a digital colony, because the AI, the algorithms, they need data. So in case we don't have data in Europe, then we have data in US and we buy AI either from US or China. And this is AI which will dominate our life, and not only in the defense area, but also in the civil area and so on. So I think this is a must, my personal opinion, that we have to do this. So just to support. But we have another question. We have, what are the consequences of the upcoming EU cybersecurity strategy for the German reform debate? Maybe Angelika, would you try to answer? So what are the consequences of the upcoming EU cybersecurity strategy for the German reform debate?
Thanks, Gabi, for addressing me. I'm not sure as to whether I really fully understood the reasoning behind the question. So the cybersecurity strategy is going to come up, and as we discussed beforehand, I'm fully in line with the idea that we have to go for a roadmap. And the question refers to what impact it has in Germany, or I'm not sure what the direction towards which here this question is actually addressed as regards Germany. You have to more specify that if you be so kind.
For you, okay. Thanks a lot. And there is another question for Evert. Maybe if I can see it. Is there an early cooperation plan with FCAS with the US to ensure the interoperability and to avoid any interoperability conflicts later on, based on the fact that Germany is relying on some US capabilities on the battlefield?
This is a fantastic question. I'll go back to the answer of Secretary of State Zimmer. Let me be extremely explicit. The US communication, let's say, algorithms are black box. And it's not about whether we could not link to them, but they don't want us to be able to communicate in a NATO context with F-35, just as an example. So it's really, they have made a closed shop. And maybe Tempest does the same. And again, as Secretary of State says, if the willingness, political willingness is there, independent of protecting national sovereignties, but you will always be able to do it. There will always be encryptions that allow German data to stay in Germany and not be shared. But if you don't want to communicate, if you want to avoid any cyber attacks in your system, then the first thing, the way to do then is you shut your system from any communication outside your trusted area, and that's what the US did. So today, of course, the most modern weapon systems, F-35, cannot communicate in a NATO environment unless you buy the black boxes from US, which I think certainly on topics like FCAS, we are not planning to do. So there's lots of political discussions needed in order to be NATO compatible. And it's technically all feasible, but of course, if you don't have the specifications, then you cannot link the ones and the zeros.
That is true. That is true. Any comment from you, State Secretary Zimmer, on this issue?
No, I couldn't. On the one hand, I couldn't agree more. On the other hand, Of course, you can communicate. The question is which mass of data you can get transported within the framework. Definitely, we are working together with a link basis, and that is just exchanging essential vectors in order to have a certain amount of your environmental picture, but not more than that. And the idea behind of what we are trying to achieve with FCAS, what we are trying to achieve with this kind of network, hopefully in Europe, more than 3 nations, rather 12, 20 nations at the end of the day, is that we have one system that can work closely together. That's feasible. You do not have to open all the books from a technical point of view, but you have to, as I mentioned, you have to identify and to open an entrance, a door we can exchange. And that must be done in a common language. If then data will be exchanged, it is just a question of technological means, how many data you pass by. But you have to open it to a certain amount. And that hasn't been happened by now with the American system, with the F-35. I think at the end of the day, we have to overcome that. At the end of the day, quite clear, we can only be effective if we have the chance to have this kind of knowledge more data available at the same time as might be the enemy in order to prevent him to come first. Quite simple story. You can solve that, but it's not that simple. And it's not even simple in Europe in close cooperation between the nations in Europe.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe. Allow me one comment, Gabi, if possible. Very short. It is exactly this point. It's about wanting to cooperate, and I am sure that if FCAS, it's a little bit like Galileo and GPS. GPS was not willing to cooperate until Galileo came. I'm sure that if we don't buy F-35 and really go on with FCAS, then over time there will be an interoperability between F-35 and FCAS, because they will want to talk and exchange with friends to let's say as much as they want. But until the FCAS is more reality than today, I think the US situation will not change.
Thanks a lot. So since we are more or less coming to the end, well, I have, of course, a provocative question at the end always. So what would you see? We have problems. So we have very high ethical values, high very standard GPR standards. On the other side, we see that we are 27 nations, member states. We need a strong Europe. We need a fast Europe. We need a Europe with vision and courage to address all these challenges of the IT space. So we need a roadmap to European digital sovereignty. And the question would be, my final question would be to you, what do you see? What are the main issues, main steps, maybe 2, 3 brainstorming that we need to do to achieve in the roadmap to achieve an European sovereignty? So if I may, Angelika, may I start with you? What would you say? What is the roadmap? What should be there?
Well, I only would like to take up one thing. I think data is key. Data. You mentioned that as well, Gabi. So we have to make sure that we are capable of using the data which are used by our citizens, by our institutions, by our companies. I think everything. IT infrastructure is important as well, and common standards and regulation, all is important, but data, how to ensure that really the data is going to be kept in Europe. I think this is very crucial. And let me maybe just add one more sentence, because actually I think what happened yesterday, it had nothing to do with your conference now, but that, a European company, BioNTech, was the first one who asked, for the COVID-19 vaccine. This company was heavily funded also by the European Union, by the EIB, and now when I look what's happening, that all 27 member states are trying to organize themselves in a fair distribution of the vaccine. It's not yet done. It's highly complicated. It's not trivial. But I just wanted to say we have so much power. We have so much enthusiasm. And Europe is such a great continent, in particular, if you look what's happening all over in the world. So I really think we'll manage it. Really, really big challenges are lying ahead of us. But nonetheless, I'm 100% convinced. We Europeans have always been strong. When there are crises, we find a way commonly to get out of this crisis. I know Brexit is in front of us, but I just wanted to finish by saying I strongly believe in the European Union. And as regards the digital world, we have to do everything so that Europe is also to be a player and not only the playing field. That is what we should head on, and whatever I can do in my role as a member of the European Parliament, I will do that. Let me know if you have any good idea. I listened to you all and have taken over some ideas, but let's keep in touch. Thank you.
So I think we all believe in our strong Europe, and we all believe that we can manage it. And with 500 million people, we are really strong, and especially all the top researchers, top excellence researchers come almost from Europe, may I say so. But what is the answer from State Secretary Zimmer? What would you say? What do we have to do?
I try to go a little bit deeper than on the strategic level. First of all, to the industry, I think competition is good, monopoly is bad. However, without working together, it won't work in the future. So we do not talk about structure, but we are talking about cooperation. We have to get used to that. That's the main question of trust I mentioned. For the governmental side, I would like to add the same point. It's always good to talk about work share. It's always good to talk about having all the necessary rights at your own hand. But at the end of the day, there will be a need of share as well, necessary in order to come closer together than we are currently. And that is a long way we have to do, but we have to pace forward in order not to be, at the end of the day, in 10 or 15 years obsolete.
Thanks. May I continue, Jiří? What is your perspective?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of what we do here in the EDA, I believe, first of all, indeed, it's the security of supply chains now for research, technology, development, skills, brains, IP, etc. And then, indeed, the, let's say, sovereignty or reasonable level of autonomy, independence in all the layers of components, first, equipment, second, and systems, I would say, third. And all this indeed wrapped in the understanding of the civil military dual use nexus. Yeah, that's what I would add from our perspective. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. May I ask Evert, what would you say?
I'll keep it very simple. European regulation, along Angelika's statements on data, maybe an extension of what we have in GDPR, and we really set a fantastic sign that has global followers now. And we have to do that, step one. And if you would ask me, could we get every country from the European recovery budget, which are linked to COVID, if we could get 5% of that budget in each nation to go towards creating future in each of those nations linked to digital sovereignty, let them create something that is useful for Europe, then we create future, because data is future, data evaluation, artificial intelligence, and there's everywhere, fantastic universities, but we have to really get a little bit away from agriculture. I don't have any problem with agriculture, but if we don't move some of the money into future orientation, we won't get far. That's my wish.
Thanks a lot. Last but not least, Stefan.
So three things. Define the segments, and Angelika is probably for me not only data, that's a core thing, absolutely clear, but I would also see defining segment where we should be sovereign would be search, browser, social media, and probably also autonomous driving. And I'm sure from a security perspective, there are 2-3 other segments where we should stay independent from the rest of the world. Second, regulate the markets, that big tech is not taking over the segments too early. Third, let's start a new Gründerzeit, a founder's time, where great industry companies and young startup companies are building these free territories with great companies, with great services for Europeans who use them under our values. And these would be my 3 points. And probably also increase the spending program by the European Investment Bank. They made, as far as I know, 16% return on their investments per year by investing into digital companies in Europe. They have a fantastic return, and to pump up that fund for Europe to co-invest into these new segments where we define we want to be independent, that also could be a great idea. My 3 points.
Okay. Stefan, thanks a lot. So we came to the end of our panel. I think it was really, really interesting. Thanks a lot, all participants. I think we got some insights. We hopefully can provide some input for various places. We are not here at the end. We are starting discussion. I think we have to move fast. We have to discuss. We have to invest. We have to just do it. And I hope together as a stakeholder group, as a great ecosystem of various strong partners, we can really do this. So I would give me also the opportunity, this gives me also the opportunity to thank you all for the whole day, which concludes the whole first day of the Code Conference. And maybe just to give you an indication, we are in the digital conference, but this nice stuff is coming analogic via mail to you. So as a small appreciation of your time and support. So thanks again, all the best, and see you tomorrow at the next session. So bye-bye. Thanks a lot. And thanks also to the virtual community outside. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the day. Bye.
Bye-bye.